I mean, it's helped me just keep track of my own self, keep me sane. And like I said, in terms of mental health, it's given me social relationships, because we're not alone in this world.
Welcome to the LHP podcast once again. And this week, again, we try to do everything possible to make sure that we have topics that are important, that will interest people. Things having to do with mental health, things having to do with lifestyle and being able to get out there in our community, because we've been blessed to live in a city that has a lot of jewels. The only one thing is that we don't really go out there and check to see what's going on, or sometimes it doesn't get to us. So the one of the prime motives of this podcast is to try to get the word out there as much as possible. And in today's episode, we have a guest that's going to talk to us a little bit about poetry and the importance of going out there and just doing things with open mic here in El Paso. And why do I think this is important? Because in past episodes, we'd had the opportunity also to talk to different people that let us know that doing something completely different and out of your elements is actually a really good thing for your mental health. So today's guest is going to talk to us a little bit about exposing yourself and being a little vulnerable and what's going to happen when you do that. Well, A lot of magical things are going to happen when you decide to say, hey, you know what, screw it. What do I have to lose? Absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, you start learning a little bit more about your capabilities, who you are, what you're capable of doing, and then you develop love for the thing that made you nervous and scared. So today, our guest, Mr. Marrufo, Richie, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is a beautiful space, and I love this podcast. I've been listening to a lot of past episodes with friends on it, but you perfectly encapsulated the kind of transformation process that I've seen people not only just through the open mic series, but also as an educator. I'm always encouraging my students to go out there and try new things and experience. And again, it just ties into mental health so much as well. So,
no, absolutely. Yeah, most definitely. You mentioned students, and you mentioned being an educator. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've been teaching at El Paso Community College since maybe about 2011.
Valle Verde.
Different campuses. My home campus for the most part has been Rio Grande, near downtown, but every now and then I've taught at Valle Verde. But I in terms of my own education, I started teaching at UTEP in grad school in the literature program, and I really fell in love with teaching college. So I started teaching part-time at EPCC, and that just all of a sudden, in a blink of an eye, decades passed. On the top of that, I've been doing all the open mics for a decade plus, and there's a lot of bleed through because of teaching English, being involved in the local literary scene, kind of like the underground.
Yes.
I've been able to do a lot of try and reach a lot of different people in that way, and really create these encouraging spaces.
But what a subject, though. I mean, teaching English is very difficult, right? Yes,
writing in general.
Media
literacy in many ways is part of that as well, but I really enjoy that. Yeah.
So you do, when you were a teacher, you were editing and pretty much having your students go up there, and what kind of projects would you have them do to develop themselves with a subject?
Well, I mean, a lot of what I teach is like first year composition stuff. So we're teaching them different types of essays, composition techniques. But we really try and emphasize, especially at El Paso Community College, I guess learning about the community. We do this whole thing called learning about the community as a community. So some essays encourage them to go out there into the city and just find unique things, whether it be art or performance spaces or fun, nonprofits that are doing good work in the city. So it just encouraging them to again maybe kind of break out of their shells. A lot of them are fresh out of high school, although, the typical community college student there's a lot of different demographics, right? You have people who like maybe are coming back to school who maybe didn't get a chance to do it right away or want to pursue a career of some sort. So
well, that's cool. Yeah, definitely. I mean, but the expression though, I think is important. Mental health wise.
Yes.
I always say it's important that you're able to communicate well what it is that you feel is on your mind. Sometimes it is important that you're able to express yourself to the world because it only makes you feel better, not withholding things inside. And when what you're doing is so valuable because I think that, the more you know, the better you are to express yourself, the better it is to be able to communicate with the world, for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, because of my role and also, of course, being just involved in the local literary scene, a common place I visit almost yearly is Jefferson High School. My friend Eddie Acosta has been teaching English there. And he's always he's really so great about promoting local poets, local writers to his students. And I just think that's a real gift. Yeah. And I don't think some of them appreciate like they should. But I do remember one time he had us in like an auditorium and I got to perform some of my poetry. We encouraged some of the students to share some of theirs. And you're right. A lot of it's just about like introspection, like finding about yourself. And so I'll always remember there was one girl, like I was asking them just like, what is poetry to you? And what she said sticks with me so much so that I continue to share that, including right now on this podcast where she said, we fear what we do not know. So I write to know myself. And I just think that's such a huge aspect of mental health, right? Is understanding those parts of you that maybe you try and avoid. Because I think in mental health, a lot of times we get in trouble when we avoid that stuff. Like you said, bottle it up or like push it to the side. And sorry.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it.
I'm so expressive. I always hit mics on podcasts because
that means that you know what you're doing for sure, man. All the movements are... Well, I wanted to take a deep dive into your psyche as far as how'd you get into poetry, man? I mean, a lot of people don't give credit to poetry. They link it to something maybe romantic, something a little more on the, not a lot of, people get into poetry. But that's not true, man. Poetry is life sometimes. So can you get us started with how you got started in poetry?
Yeah, that's an interesting genesis there. I mean, I could go all the way back to when I was a kid and just realizing that the way we use our words has an impact on it affects other people. Just a very basic understanding. But in high school, I joined our literary magazine as just an interest. And I loved reading. I think that's where a lot of love for perhaps writing starts, is if you pick up an affinity for literature, for books, for reading.
Anything in particular?
Oh, I can think back to a very, very, it always changes, but I think back to like maybe fourth grade. I loved reading as many books as I could. We had what was it called? AR program, like the advanced reading, or you get points
AP?
for, I don't know if it was AP. I'm drawing a blank so bad right now. But you would read books and then you could take a quiz on the book and then get points on it. And then
like a quick little book review type of thing.
Something like that. It was to encourage reading in the classrooms. And I just remember always competing with some of my friends to like always have the most points. And but I really fell in love with J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit.
The Hobbit. Okay. Yeah. That's a popular book.
It is, and I mean, but when I read that, it hadn't really been made into the big movie franchise
that it is now.
Yeah. I mean, they started with Lord of the Rings, and I'll admit, like, the book meant so much to me. Like, I read it in fourth grade, which, maybe is kind of young to read it, but it's an adventure book. There's a lot in it. What I really found love was the concept of, I think my parents had it on a bookshelf, and I pulled it out, and it's kind of old looking, pages, yellowing pages, and there was a map in the front to this whole world, and just having that map there in the beginning piqued my curiosity so much. And so when I got into the book,
that's a blessing right there, by the way.
Yeah, and so
no, the reason why I'm saying it's a blessing is because Not a lot of people like to read, man. As a matter of fact, some people would avoid anything to read or just get the Cliff Notes or just jump into a video that talks about the overall summary. But the simple fact that you said that you opened up a book and that you saw a map and that it just inspired you to keep going. Keep going.
I love telling that story just because, again, that's just a book that left such an impact on me. It inspired me. Like, if this guy Tolkien can create these worlds that are inspiring about, the Hobbit is a very atypical hero of sorts. They're not the hero sort, right? But it's like the smallest creature that makes a huge difference in this story. Same thing happens in Lord of the Rings and all that. So that opened the whole world to me. That by the time I'm in high school, I already love reading. I love books. So I joined the literary magazine that we had there called Reveille. I went to Eastwood High School.
Trooper.
Yeah, and
cool.
we took submissions. I submitted short stories and poems, and then I kind of kept going with that. I studied literature in college, and again, you mentioned a lot of people don't like to read. Part of I'm trying really hard to leave a mark in the literary sense of the world. Having spaces that are encouraging for writers of all experience levels to share their work to the public, but also promoting literacy, trying to, encouraging students to read more, my students to read more, obviously outside of the homework. Because I hate to say it, but sometimes I think school discourages people from experiencing new things.
It did me, man.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. It did. All throughout high school, I had a hard time with picking up a book and reading through the whole text and understanding it. I think there's a couple of books out there that I do remember while in high school, and I think it was maybe The Great Gatsby, To Kill a Mockingbird, maybe. Those were really good books. But it wasn't until later on in life where I started reading these other books that I should have read when I was in high school, like Orwell and things having to do with the world and how it functions. But once that little bug is implanted in your mind, you want to just keep going. It opens up that curiosity to say, I'm going to go to the library, I'm going to check out to see what else, moves me. I'm going to go hang out and chill at Barnes and Noble to see if I can pick up another book. And it becomes so addicting. So
yeah, and when it's for your own growth, I don't think most people don't second guess that. And if it's an interest, something that they want to pursue, as soon as it becomes homework, people are, like you said, I'll look at the Cliff Notes. And I'm just always encouraging all my students, and again, when I say students, it's not just teaching, but people I interact with daily, or who are listening to this right now. Like, find that thing that interests you and just dive so deeply into it.
Passion.
And yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to share that. And we talked about the creativity of that curiosity of kids. I always emphasize that, in any writing class that I teach, whether it be writing essays, composition, or poetry. Just try and embrace that curiosity when you were a kid and you wanted to know what everything was. What's that for? What does that do? What's that for? Why? At some point, that little kid asking all those questions is kind of silenced growing up. And I think when we can embrace that part, magic happens again with whether our own pursuit of knowledge or in our own creative endeavors, whether it be music, art, writing. And that's something I've been able to experience through so many people in this past decade of doing this.
That's cool. Yeah. Now, I know you probably have mainstream people that have inspired you, but sure. What about local people that are into poetry? Yeah. How have they inspired you? Somebody from an open mic series, for example. I know you're involved with spoken words. Right?
Yeah.
What is that all about? How do you find like-minded people to say, hey, this is going to feed into what I love to do?
Yeah. Well, I think for context, it'll help to mention, in case if people are unfamiliar or the uninitiated, I'm the project director for the Barbed Wire Open Mic Series. We are El Paso's longest running open mic series. We started in 2007. And it was part of the El Paso Creative Writing Program. I'm sorry, the UTEP. The UTEP MFA Creative Writing Program. It was founded by Veronica Guajardo and Trent Hundley, as well as my really good friend Roberto Santos, who took that and expanded it. And when it was my time, I would help him out. I made it out to those around 2012. I took over, so I've been the project director since 2012. In that time, we've won several awards. We've won Community Spirit Awards from the college, Texas Open Mic of the Year, and just last year, the city council made a resolution and gave us our own day.
I saw that on Instagram.
So that's just a little bit of context of what Barbed Wire Open Mic Series is. But through that, I've touched on other scenes, because there's this thing, Poetry Slam, which is like the competitive.
Talk to me a little bit more about
saying,
Poetry Slam.
Yeah,
that sounds really interesting right there.
Yeah, Poetry Slam. I think there are a lot of misconceptions about what that is. It's a competitive way. Okay, I'll say this. I'll simplify it. It's a way for people to share their work in a unique way, right? And so it started off with like people at a bar who just want to share their work, and then they pick people from the audience to give a score, like 0 through 10.
So you get participation from the people there, and it's chilling.
Yeah, and it's trying to get people involved, like strangers, and the idea is just to promote poetry. So Poetry Slam has become such a huge thing. Some of the biggest things I see, like content online, is bun poetry, right about now poetry. I'm trying to do stuff like that here, where we're doing like media content for our poets. But yeah, Poetry Slam is a whole other thing. Sometimes people's feelings get hurt because it becomes competitive, but it's just a whole other way of sharing work, and it's fun. It's a thrill. I think we were talking about that, like diving into something that you really love, and like maybe the rush of endorphins when it comes from hitting the stage, or like seeing people react to your words, or being able to connect with it. So we've had a couple iterations of slam in El Paso. When I was coming up, the one was called Freehole Slam, which was like the play on freehole, but also like words from your mouth, but also frijole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Frijole Slam. Some people didn't like that, but
that's cool, man. I think it's clever.
Yeah, no, there's an identity behind it, but that was super fun.
But wait, when you do these, say, is it safe to call them similar to battles in hip hop, kind of?
I mean, there's a whole culture behind it, Battles are interesting too. I'm not too familiar with that. Like, I like hip hop ciphers, where it's like people standing in a circle and sharing ideas.
There you go.
Freestyling.
That is cool.
And sometimes when battles become super competitive, it's about like tearing down like the
you
person.
Mentioned feelings. That's why now you had mentioned something about some people's feelings getting hurt and stuff like that.
But maybe because of that, you also have like there's like in battle rap, I think sometimes they mess around with the format, and it's like they'll do a compliment battle where you have to like compliment the other person. I wish,
that's cool.
Yeah, to kind of combat the negativity. Because it could be perceived as negative, right? Same thing with like slamming. That one of the things we always say in the slam world is the point is not the points, the point is the poetry. So I mean it's been an uphill downhill battle. At one point I was supposed to take over Freehole Slam, but I was also running the open mic and teaching, and so it was a lot to juggle. So a lot
of things on your plate.
Yeah, so eventually that faded away, and we didn't have slam poetry in the city for a while. I helped start one up called Frontera Poetry Slam, like around 2015, 2016. And so we brought some slams. We had some really nice ones, but
and what's your crowd like?
It's a mix. Yeah. There's people who are really into it, and and then people who just want to try new things. There's definitely certain personality types who will find something and just go out and find it. But like a lot of the art scene, a lot of the music scene, we tend to be in bubbles sometimes. Yeah. That like if you don't know about it, it doesn't exist. And so personally, even a decade plus, I'm still trying to figure out how to bridge like to more people. But maybe it's something like this, doing more.
Absolutely.
Reaching new people.
Yeah, all this is combined, I think. Yeah. It's definitely a cluster of things that are related. And I remember when I was a couple of years back when I was with Zonk, we used to go out and we used to skate. And then we used to go downtown, and it wasn't what it is now, because right now they have a lot of options. They get to do a lot of stuff. But the scene has always been there. It's just, we're trying to let other people aware, because there's a lot of like-minded people that want to find what you guys are doing too. So I think the more we talk about it, I think the more we expose this type of activity to our community, the more they'll be able to come out and really enjoy themselves.
Yeah, it is very much. These are also just typically, like you were saying before we started this, the counterculture. And we want a little bit of mainstream to know about it too.
Yeah.
Right.
Of course.
And like I said, my mission is just going to classrooms and visiting, like I said, Jefferson High School. Other visits. I mean, so the Barbed Open Mic Series is actually part of a literary nonprofit called BorderSenses. And so we do have other literary projects. And again, the whole point is to promote literacy and the literary arts in the city. So, the other projects involve writing workshops for teens, people in college. That's called Forward.
Yeah.
We have another project called Memorias de Silencio, and that's writing workshops for migrant workers and the families of migrant workers.
All right.
They put together journals. And it's, I love working with them. I usually work with Forward and teach workshops. This past summer,
So this summer you're doing a lot of workshops right now as we speak.
Well, I'm teaching summer school for the college, but I've also done a couple of workshops through Forward, and I'm lucky because I already kind of have a student population that I'm working with through EPCC. I have another project that I help with called Papagayo, and that's part of the college.
Yeah,
and it's just kind of similar, promoting the arts and literary culture. And it's kind of extracurricular for students, but we're just trying to encourage them to be part of the college, get excited about doing stuff with the college, volunteer work. I think in a couple of weeks we're going to be handing out books to little kids.
Well, that's cool.
At Rio Grande campus. Yeah, people from all around the city bring their kids, and then we just hand out books. And it's at the school, and they learn about like a lot of the other programs. But it's really fun just to hand out books, and they get so excited about them.
No, definitely, man. Definitely. What you're doing is super golden. I think a lot of people should know about, what you guys are doing, because of the fact that you guys are letting people in and encouraging people to do something great. As far as like improvising.
Yeah.
How does poetry help you with getting out there and just doing something different?
That's interesting. Yeah, so I think poetry as an art form can be very. It asks you to think about things in unique ways, new ways of doing things, and so I just think that element of poetry can translate to other things. Just being able to think on your toes, to adapt. I think the human spirit and adaptability is such a powerful thing to have, to be able to adapt to any kind of circumstance. And improvise, and then kind of work with what you have, because when you're writing, you're sitting in front of a blank page or a blank screen. You're just, what do you work with? And so,
have you ever met anybody who just goes up there and does something off the top of their head?
All sorts of amazing people. Yeah. As in terms of performance, yes, I've always had amazing people come and just. In fact, a lot of people will ask people from the audience for a topic, and then they'll just start kind of riffing, and then they go into a zone.
Yeah.
I've seen it like people in like hip hop freestyler, for example, Mos Def. There's a video of him when he's a lot younger doing a freestyle cipher, and he closes his eyes, and you can tell he goes within, and he just kind of hits a flow, and I think that's touching on this very human thing. Where when you can go within and start pulling something out of it, like
deep expressions.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you done that yourself?
Yeah. Oh, all the time. Yeah. I love. I always all my closest friends know. Sometimes I'll just like to start improvising, freestyling. Maybe not.
We saw some of your videos. Arturo and I saw some of your videos before you came in here, and some of the things that you're doing are impressive, man. I see. With a microphone, you put the beat onto it, then you slowly work yourself in. That's definitely an art form for sure.
Yeah. So my background is, I have a background in music. I've been playing saxophone since elementary school. Through that, I've found other instruments, and as a poet, maybe some people say it's gimmicky. there's, I don't know, there's always purists of some sort, right? But I like to incorporate a lot of music in my poetry. When I started doing open mics in 2008, just to attend, I would take my saxophone and I would like just kind of think of a line, a saxophone line. I'd play a little phrase, and then I would try and follow it up with words that mimic the phrase. So that was very improvisational.
Yeah, definitely.
And some parts were smoother than others, but it was all working it out, because I think that's what an open mic stage is. It's an opportunity to work stuff out on stage, get experience.
How do you build that though, Richie? I mean, think about it. It's not what, it's not just like a nonchalant type of thing. You really have to build courage to get up there and do something. Were you always shy growing up?
I feel like I'm still shy, like a lot. And some people will hear that and just like laugh, like that's not true.
Yeah. Most people view you as an extrovert for sure.
Yeah. It's a funny thing. Yeah. Sometimes it depends. Yeah.
What were your struggles with that? Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like, how was it that you had to break out of the shell?
I don't know. I feel like I've always lived in my inner world, and sometimes I'm like too much, like in my head, and I think it's just like a release. I think I realize it's an opportunity to release all the things swimming around up here and in here, and just ultimately what really sold me on being able to through expression is being able to connect with others.
Okay, connecting with
a
others.
lot of stuff we hold in is something someone else might be experiencing or going through, an emotion, a fear, a hope. And when I started expressing this stuff out loud, I started finding people who like, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And that's how I've met so many friends and meaningful relationships, and that I never would have gone that, just kind of being in my own world, inward. And so there is and that's why I've been able to do this for so long, because it's about making meaningful human connections.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. It's definitely something important to do. And what you're speaking of right now, and being able to express your deep emotions, I encourage a lot of people to do a lot of times during a session. For example, if I'm doing a therapeutic session with a client, one of the things that we do in the treatment is journaling, right? But not only that, I give them the option also to say, well, why don't you talk to me a little bit about what you wrote down on that piece of paper? And some of the things that they wrote down are you can categorize as being poetry. And a lot of them will tell you, this is something that I've always wanted to express, but I just never had the opportunity to do. So is there anything like in your life that one particular moment or poem that has moved you?
You mean of what I've written?
Of what you've written, or what somebody else has written too?
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, if I think of, like, I've been reading a lot of contemporary poets who touch on just so many topics that I struggle with or can like identify with. I mean, I've been reading a lot of Kyle Tranmere, aka Guante. So he's a contemporary poet out of the Midwest. He's a spoken word poet and rapper. He's featured a lot like on Bun Poetry. He has like 2 collections, but he writes a lot about like, issues with like toxic masculinity, like this idea that you're not supposed to like express yourself certain ways. Like even being in the poetry world, sometimes, that's to everyone, that's not a masculine thing sometimes.
Go into that.
And there's a misconception about it. Like why, why does it have to be that way? So he talks a lot about that kind of stuff. Class struggle,
Well, the reason you talked about that,
dive more into that. Yeah.
The reason for that is because right now there's a lot of controversy when it comes to that type of stuff. So, but what's wrong with what's with toxic masculinity and doing what we're talking about here?
Yeah. Even the phrase I know already is going to have people react a certain way,
and that's a good thing. We want people to react to this type of stuff.
I think so, right? It's like the typical phrase, that thing that we always say about art. It should like comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something along those lines. And that's quoted by so many different people. I always forget the original source on that, but yeah. Like I said, in El Paso, there's a lot of machismo culture. And so I think just maybe the idea of being part of the world, a lot of people don't understand it, but also that's why there's a lot of people have a lot of trouble expressing themselves, and you know, it creates problems for themselves, you know, which again, you're talking about like journaling is like an exercise to like get your thoughts down. And also maybe sometimes we just don't have the tools to express ourselves, you know? And so just sometimes we go to poetry or art, you know, being able to like maybe release through a paintbrush, you know, and colors and poetry. And sometimes you need metaphor, you know, to say something that's harder for you to say.
Okay. What would be a good example of a metaphor that you can express that would be universal, that people could understand? Can you come up with, can you think of anything that any context that would point us in that direction? Because I know that's the way the world works now, right? A lot of times you say one thing, but it could mean so many other things to a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the other thing about art. Like you can leave something out there so people can interpret it in their own way. Exactly. And get their own meaning from it. And then as soon as you explain it can even like ruin it. Like, well, actually I was talking about this, you know? Off the top, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know I'm thinking of another poet that visited El Paso recently. He's a Mexican-American, son of Mexican immigrants, Jose Olivares. He's based out of Chicago, and he's a really dope contemporary poet. And through the college, we brought him to town, and he got to speak with the students. And we had an open mic where we featured him. And you know, he has 2 books out, and one of his books he talks about you know, making friends with his monsters. It's about like therapy.
Yeah. What does that mean?
You know,
what does that mean to
in
him,
this
right?
case is like he churns his insecurities into tangible like beings or monsters, you know. And in this particular poem, you know, for example, he's one of the things that he addresses is like dealing with issues of his body weight, body image, you know, something that again, maybe you might not hear men talking about too often, right?
You don't, because you know, it's not something that people see it as a common thing, but how valuable is that for somebody to be able to express an insecurity like that, for example, be able to just let it out there and be able to say, look, this is something that I struggled with. Boom, there it is. Yeah. Just throw it out, take the weight off of your shoulders and just embrace. And, you know, from there, it'll give you some sort of idea as to what steps you want to take next to deal with it, right?
You can't really take any actionable. You can't take any action until you discover and you can point at it, right? Like, so that's kind of one of the first steps, right? Is to recognize it,
shedding light to it, for sure. Yeah. So I mean, back to the poet from Chicago that you're talking about. I mean, I think that's extremely nice that this person's willing to be able to express those type of things. Yeah,
and that's all over, you know, like all these people I'm bringing up are just kind of like spur of the moment. Like I could go anywhere, you know, like so many other people that I could reference to just putting that out there, you know, that's just like, oh yeah, this is just more in my mind recently. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So when you struggle with certain things, for example, like in your own personal life, I'll go ahead and let you know, like me, when I get so stressed out and I get frustrated here at home, because there's a lot of, you know, we have to be really responsible with the things that happen around home, right? You have to be a good father. You have to be a good husband. You have to be a good family member, a good citizen to society. I mean, contribute to as much positivity to this community. So sometimes I feel like just, you know, blowing a fuse. So my outlet is, you know, I'll jump on my board, go skate for a while, or I'll make a video or a podcast just like this one, or I'll just pretty much get out there and do something that's artsy that helps me out. That way I'm able to get that frustration and that stress out. How do you encourage the people that you teach, your students, about this through the artwork that you're doing?
Ooh, okay. I mean, just find that thing that does it for you. I mean, even if it isn't in the arts, I also encourage, like, there's recreational sports leagues, which, again, I think earlier you were talking about, like, you had someone who does dance recently, right? And that's physical activity. Your body's releasing endorphins, and you get to stay in shape. Like, there's a lot of benefits to that as well. But just having that outlet, I think, is the key thing. And sometimes a lot of people might not even go and try and find that. Like, what is a good positive outlet to just unwind? And it could be in other things too. It could be in construction, right? Automotive, like reworking a car. I know a lot of people use that as like a de-stressor. Like, maybe someone's reworking a car. In my world, it is just write it out, turn it into a poem, perform it on stage, and again, that's the endorphins of being up on stage, reading your poem, and then just, that's it. Like, kind of like a roller coaster ride.
How does it feel for you to be up on stage? Can you describe that?
I personally love it. I mean, it's weird, as the extrovert / introvert, flip a coin, it depends.
The number one fear is for a lot of people besides
public speaking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, well, I always make that joke in your first day of class or whatever. My English class, just because I always encourage my students to, like, to me, a good classroom is one where we can all talk with one another, and everyone's so shy, and everyone's so with like inward,
Yeah.
And I'm like, my favorite classes are the ones where we can talk. So I try to, like, right away break that down, and I make that joke. Well, everyone's fear is public speaking. Second is death. People would rather die than speak in front of, like, crowds. There is an endorphin rush speaking in front of it. You're confronting something. I really love being on stage. That is definitely an outlet for me. Like, just when I need to express myself again with music. Last night I had a show. I performed with a live jazz band.
Oh, that's cool.
Piano, bass, drums.
And you recorded, you uploaded this one, right? Or no?
Well, I need to sit down and actually get a film crew or something to record it. Just stuff off of my phone, like little clips here and there. But, it's just, to me, it's fun to be able to, like, hear my voice blend in with the band and in the space, and then see people, like, nodding their head along. And that just makes me feel like I'm where I want to be. Like, calm, comfortable. And it's out there. It's something people never would imagine. So I'm encouraging people, like, hey, maybe that's your space too.
No, and people will see this. I know that in your Instagram page, you have a few clips with a jazz band, and you're in your zone.
Yeah,
no one can stop you.
Yeah,
and you could see the determination and the way you're using certain words, because some of the words that you're using are really cool too. And I think that's also another thing. You got to be able to pick up that thesaurus and learn new words, and you've definitely done that.
Yeah.
Especially by the name of your your Instagram, Reveries. I love that.
Reverie, yeah.
I went into it, and I looking at the definition, I thought, hey, this is really cool. The way he actually put the Dead Wall Reveries together, I thought that was really awesome. So I'm gonna ask you this question, and again, I am one to stimulate those endorphins, because I like for people to spontaneity. Did I say that? There you go. I wanted to see if there was any way that you could, maybe share with us your favorite creations that you've done, that you do around town, around the city, and you've seen that you've got some really good, interactions with the public.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. One of the coolest things from doing this for so long is when strangers recognize me out on the street, but then they say one of my lines of poetry. Like, I have a poem that I've done for a long time called "Keep It Cosmic," and I've done that with bands, with like rock bands, hip hop style bands. Like I've done it cumbia style. Like it's had so many different versions. I did it with the EPCC dance program once, where I was up on stage sharing my poem, and they choreographed a dance with it. So maybe I'll share that one. Keep it just because it's like a hit.
Yeah.
And I remember being downtown and I guess someone where I performed it once yelled, "Keep it cosmic." I'm like, that's cool.
Keep it cosmic.
Yeah. And the cosmic is just kind of a way of being with the world, with the, with the universe and
connecting.
Yeah. Finding your place in the world. Like I was saying, just being up on stage. So
is it something that you did? I mean, you have it here. It's memorized.
Yeah. Yeah. I have that one. And then there's another one that I do that's a tribute to just all the connections as well. Like I mentioned, all the human connections that I've made over the years. It's called Windblown World, a Chuco love song. Okay. And that one you could probably see on my Instagram as well.
Well, how do you feel about performing that right here?
Yeah.
Right now? What do you think about that?
Yeah, let me try it. I'm going to try Windblown World.
Perfect. Let's do this.
Let's do that one. Do I look at the camera? You?
Arturo, what do you think, bro?
That's your wish.
All right, cool. I am a restless romantic, nomadic in his antics, frantic, for the flight of words to slam in the heartstrings. Except incoherent mumblings are the inept incantations drawn from the abyss of this pen's empty kiss. I have had many poems eaten by the clumsy dance of a backspace button. You are my work in progress. Isn't that all we ever are? See, I want to make music. I want that dark, smoky, aromatic tone that legends like Lester Young, Ben Webster, and Art Lewis painted their masterpieces in, when there was nothing left to yearn for, to culminate and orchestrate inky sonic thumbprints soaked in the lusty allure of dark corridors and light post forever musings of stardust flicker flame passageways. 5:07 a.m. The cosmos are crunched, and stacks of what have you nonsensical rumblings ruminate on the frothy, jazz-licked rememberings of your familiar afterkiss. Perhaps this sensitive heart is penance from a past life. For even a tangential universe such as this can explode a kiss into atomic whiplash. This is your love song. So when life is bringing you down, don't forget that ever essential elemental presence and breath like this is also the part of the poem where I would like tell the audience, like, join me. Let's take a deep breath.
Let's do it.
So if you're watching right now, let's take a deep breath. I sling freeform bebop impulses into a Chuco skyline, sonic smoke signals that swirl and twirl into the air and become misguided mockingbird melodies in search of its music. You sing sandstorm, rebop rememories. Cuando yo te vi, mi corazón bailó. See, there are 100,000 heartbeats in a day, but the ones that sound like jazz are for you. It's Windblown World.
Awesome.
It's a fun one. Thank you.
That was dope.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you for that, man.
Thank you.
That was cool, man. We were Arturo and I get
Yeah.
It's a lot. You speak to crowds, but we had firsthand right here in the studio, Mr. Richie.
Always the coolest
perform.
thing.
Yeah, cool, man. How does that make you feel?
What
you just did?
Just to perform? I mean, I feel calm now. Like that taking that breath and just like
you involved
bring it down.
That was
then,
good.
Like, yeah, and then all of a sudden the crowd's listening more, and it just, to me, I love the music of language, and so when I get to perform, it's like I'm with my saxophone playing notes. The little the syllables and the words and the way they're performed, and it just brings me peace.
You transformed
to share that message as well.
Absolutely, you totally transformed when you did that.
And that is a poem of love, of just finding the things that you love and that make you happy, pursuing them, whether it be romantic or even just in kinship in the arts.
It's so cool, man. Such an awesome episode that we're having so far right now. And believe it or not, we're actually almost at the end of our session. Yeah, it's crazy, right? I told you at the beginning that all of a sudden time will fly. But 2 questions before we leave.
Sure.
What has poetry done for your mental health? How has it helped you?
I mean, it's helped me just keep track of my own self, keep me sane. And like I said, in terms of mental health, it's given me social relationships, because we're not alone in this world, and it's tough to navigate on our own. So the people that are in my life because of that, because of this, it's so important to me. and I think just having the the relationship, the power to do all this, it's obviously given me my lifestyle, the way I live, and earn money and live and survive, even if it's not the most lucrative thing. I'm doing what I want to do, and that's important to me. So I think I'm very fortunate to be able to have a sustainable life and kind of be comfortable doing this stuff. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. It's a big risk, in a lot of ways. But for me personally, And like I said, doing the open mics all these years, I can't even explain. I've had so many people come to me and tell me, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for this. People have had dark nights of the soul. Yeah. They've had dark, and for them, it was just that little push up that they needed to make it through that night, or to be able to find community or share something or get something off their chest. And to hear that means everything to me as well. And that's what sustains me.
That's beautiful, man. Thanks for sharing that, for sure, man. Yeah, this is definitely something that connects well with mental health, for sure. And how do people get a hold of you if they want to know more about what you're doing, if they want to get involved or even volunteer with the type of art that you're into?
Oh, that's a word I love. Volunteer. No, I try and put too much on my back sometimes, and I forget to ask for help. I showed you my list of all my stuff, podcasts and videos. I still need it. So kind of what I'm using these days the most is Instagram. But who knows, with social media, it's just gone one day, next it always transforms into something new. So as of right now, my Instagram, as you mentioned, is Dead Wall Reveries.
Yes.
Which is an obscure literary reference, by the way. I always like to quiz people at the open mics, like if they can tell me where it's from.
Well, tell us where it's from.
Oh, do you guys want to know? Stay tuned for part 2. I'm kidding. It's Herman Melville has a short story called Bartleby, Scrivener on Wall Street. And have you ever seen Office Space?
Office Space. No, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's an older movie, older movie. And one day this guy refuses to, he just stops working. Kind of based off of Bartleby. I mean, obviously it's adapted, it's more modern, it's contemporary, the message is a little different, but Melville writes the story of Bartleby, who one day just stops working. He says, I prefer not to. And Dead Wall Reveries is something that he does in his office. He's in New York City, and he has a window that opens up to just a wall. New York City got all these buildings, and so these Dead Wall Reveries would be him just staring out through the window. And sometimes, to me, so when I chose that, it was a joke, social media, us staring at our phones, those Dead Wall Reveries. That prison,
in a way, right?
Yeah. So he goes, and so there's a lot of interpretation in that short story of what happens to Bartleby. Why does this happen to him? But anyway, I just thought it was an interesting concept, this idea of looking into Dead Wall Reveries and what we do when we scroll on a social media. Anyway, you can find me there. I have and you know how there's a link in the bio? That's usually what I encourage people to check out, because that has a link to, my email, all my other social media, because I've done multiple podcasts, collaborations. I work with the DJ, Midnight at the Laundromat. We did a poetry and DJ kind of thing. We round 1, and it was really successful. So we're getting for round 2. And again, the Barbed Wire open mic stuff, those links are there as well. If you ever want to come and share your work, whether it be music or poetry, any kind of performance art, I encourage people to come check it out. You don't have to perform. Check it out first. But we have up to 10 or 11 every month.
That's cool.
So it's a lot.
What's your next gig?
The next gig? It's a good question. Only because I'm getting text messages, people like, hey, this is going on. I got an open mic I have an online open mic that I do every Monday. We started it during the pandemic.
Maybe you can invite us to one
Crazy.
of those.
Those are online. But Tuesday is Mona Bar. That's an open mic. And then I might do a speaking engagement Wednesday. I'm not really sure yet.
That's so cool.
But yeah, with Las Americas, I work with them a lot as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I always encourage people. Like I always post stuff on social media. You can follow the Barbed open mic series. Actually, I just followed your channel. We have a YouTube channel as well, Barbed open mic, where I post clips of performances. So awesome, I always could use the support that way.
For sure, man. For sure. We thank you for being on our show, man.
Yeah.
Again, you add value not only to the things that we're trying to do, but also to the community. And
thank you.
Every weekend, people have things that look forward to, something that's different, something that's dynamic, something that's going to help them grow as a person. And I think this is perfect. We didn't get to the part that talked about opening up the nervous system when you go up to the microphone, right? But at the same time, we did cover a lot of good points that I think a lot of people will take away for sure. So thank you for being on the show again.
Hey, thank you for the invite, and thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. Thank you. That was another episode of the LHP podcast. We thank you once again for watching, and don't forget to follow us and to subscribe on YouTube and all that good jazz. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week.